Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Black Hat. The usual general announcements still apply. If you've been in any talks today, you know to visit the business hall and so on. And I'm going to get us started as quickly as we can. So welcome Kim Price to the stage to introduce the final talk in our micro summit on bug bounties.
All right, thank you so much for being here today. This is our third and final talk, and if you've been here for the previous two, you've heard us talk about how to maybe think about, do I want to start a bug bounty, getting through some of the marketing talk, preparing, and then we had a great panel. I'm not going to lie, when they started going off script and the panelists were asking each other questions, that made me so happy. It felt like hanging out with your friends and having a conversation, which is great. And now we're up to the third and final session in the Bug Bounty Micro Summit, which is, so you've got a program and it's been going for a while, and how do you keep it successful long term? Because, you know, the enthusiasm that researchers bring when you first launch, everyone's excited when you launch. It's huge. Everyone's, oh, new program, let's go work on it. And then once you've been around for a while, you're like, whatever, they're that, you know, I'm sure everybody's picked over it already. There's probably nothing there to find anymore. So how do you keep people engaged? And there's this concept called gamification. And so we have Chloe Brown from Bug Crowd here today to talk about how do you keep it healthy long term? How do you gamify the experience and incentivize the reward system? But also, when do you bring out the ban hammer? How do you handle the incidents long term that start cropping up in programs? Chloe's background before Bug Crowd is in gaming. She was a game community manager. And so extensive community management experience that she's brought to bear on the security space. And it is my pleasure to introduce her for this next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, folks. So as Kim very kindly spoke, my name is Chloe. I work at Bug Crowd, and I currently lead our support and our escalation teams. And what that means is anytime a researcher or a program owner says, I need help, they're talking to my team. And anytime there is we're seeing something wrong on our program, or I'm a researcher and I need to get an answer, and I'm being ignored. Hi, guys. So as Kim said, I came from video games, and my very first industry job that I was getting paid for in games was I was working for the Xbox Live enforcement team. So my first job, I banned hackers. And now I actively work with them, try to get them to play nice, try to get them paid reasonably and on time. And we're going to come back to that particular on-time comment in a little bit. Ooh, I'm going the right way. Oh, and by the way, I like cats. So, first and foremost, we're going to talk about incentivization and how, once you've figured out what your bounty budget is, how you grow that over time, how you can mix and match with different types of incentive options, and understand that what starts as being a core motivator for researchers, very commonly cash, isn't always the thing that they're always going to want. Yes, everybody likes getting paid. Let's face it, core understanding, right? Everybody wants to get paid for the reasonable work that they have reasonably done and reasonably disclosed to your team. Well, that's not the only thing there is. You have options. We're going to talk about cash. We're going to talk about swag. We're going to talk about collaboration opportunities. And finally, we're going to talk about that very dirty, dirty word called disclosure. So, I want to be that cat. Can you imagine having swag like that cat? Cool. So, cash rewards. This is the easiest thing that you can offer as a reward for your program. You have a budget, that budget translates into dollars. You pay those dollars out through whatever means, whether you're using a payment vendor or your team, or you're doing it yourself. But those cash rewards, We talked a little bit about earlier today, you have to build those up over time. So you have to understand where to start your rewards so that you have the ability to grow them. And that isn't necessarily a thing that you're going to grow in the first 6 months, the first year, but as you receive reports and those reports get fixed and your product, hopefully, becomes harder and more mature, the researchers are going to have to work harder. They're going to have to invest more of their time into your code to find the vulnerabilities. That is a great thing, but that investment of time needs to have a corresponding payoff. And so if your top payout started at, say, $1,500, when you first started 5 years ago, if your code has benefited from hundreds and hundreds or thousands or more of researchers reporting and you fixing things, it's going to be harder for them to go find something. So that top reward and also the bottom rewards should be uplifted over time. Swag seems like one of the easiest things going out there, and it has some great benefits. You are literally giving the researchers a physical reminder of your program so that you can go and see them on Twitter, because everybody loves getting their swag package. They open it up, it's on Twitter or on Facebook or their blogs, wherever the case may be. They rep it at conferences, especially if you get those really soft and comfortable t-shirts. Those are the core ones that you want to get. Backpacks, anything that you can put your name on that could be potentially brought to a conference, that's key. Also, researchers grow up over time. I'm telling you now, baby bibs, onesies, children's-sized t-shirts, you do not understand how much of a killing those, the researchers respond to those incredibly, because researchers have families. And they like seeing that if they enjoy the program that they're working on, they like seeing their kids in it. And a cute kid in a cute t-shirt, that plays really well on social media. Okay. So the slightly more advanced options, if you will, that definitely are not something you necessarily want to start with in your first year is collaboration opportunities and disclosure. Disclosure is not a dirty word in the way that I am using it, but I use it very broadly. There are some teams, some products that can't be talked about that they are when they're running a program. They're private. For whatever reason, government, unreleased, unannounced product, we still want to get them tested. But there isn't a way for you to say, this is the place where I'm allowing everybody to come test on it. Well, you can talk about the fact that you care about security by having something like a Hall of Fame, where you credit that somebody found something, reported it, it was fixed. A leaderboard, if you're a little bit more advanced, which will show, hey, over time, these are the folks who have provided the most value to us. Perhaps you decide you want to run an incentive where for a specific period of time, this one product over here, over all of the rest, is going to have an additional bonus. So the person who finds the most, or the top 3 people who find the most bugs in that specific focus, could then, get an additional prize. And there's a, maybe you run it for a month or a couple, 2 months. And over the end of that period of time, they're competing with each other, and you get recognition that way. The panel mentioned a little bit CVEs, requests for technical write-ups or permission to, when they're interviewing, speak about their vulnerabilities, how they found them, their processes. Well, it's a type of disclosure. And if they come to you and say, here's the area in which I'm using this information, may I have your permission to do so? It's certainly of their benefit, but the disclosure possibility is semi-limited. I'm certainly giving permission to someone to speak about their content, their vulnerabilities at a place like Black Hat, or NullCon or RuCon, any of the cons, any of the security ones, just attach a con to it, right? How many of those are there? Those opportunities allow a researcher to stand up and very proudly say, I found a thing that was really cool I got paid for it, I didn't get paid for it, it's not the point. It's, I want to share this information with another researcher for usually one of two purposes. Yeah, I want to be able to brag about it. Let's face it, we're humans, we like taking credit for things. The other one is, I want to be able to give back to a community who very likely helped me get started. Hackers, we have the stereotype of they live in their dark little basements and they got their hoodies over their head and they never talk to anybody. The reality is they talk all the time. And that also comes back to play when maybe the relationship isn't so great. But what it allows in this instance, when we're talking about collaboration, is it allows a researcher who is banging their head against a wall going, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm blocked, and I know there's a thing here. They can go to another friend, another researcher, someone who may have a little bit more specialized skills or advanced skills and say, can you help me out? Can you take a look at what I'm doing and tell me what's next? Now, this comes into play with probably what is the most advanced type of incentivization process that you can have, which is running an on-site hackathon or bug bash, where you are bringing potentially, a couple 50 to 100 researchers into one environment and bringing your development team and letting those two groups mix together, letting your development team actually walk around and watch hackers work and understand how they get to all the various processes of, this is where I start, and these are the scans that I run, and this is the tech that I use, and all of that. That is invaluable to understand how an attacker is actually coming into your environment. All right, so talk a little bit about how to keep researchers around and engaged. Talk a little bit about growing that engagement over time, because you always need to acquisition new. How do you start building the trust that you need to actually keep researchers coming back? So we know the idea of pay early and often. I'm going to come back to that one. There is also a concept, though, of the trust that you're expecting researchers to offer you. They're looking for the same thing back. The panel mentioned, that program owners step in and they think, the researcher, they have all the power in this, this relationship. They're the ones that can go and disclose. They can cause us trouble. That's true. You're the ones who hold the cash. You're the ones who literally are making or breaking them being able to pay their bills, to advance their careers, to potentially move out of being a researcher and get into security as a full-time job. That shift in thinking that trust goes both ways is really important. If you think about marketing sort of 101, it is always more expensive to go out and find a new customer than it is to retain a customer who's actually already there. Well, the researchers look at that the same too. Think about it. They have gone potentially through all this trouble, writing up a report for you, proving a POC, reporting it, potentially working with your team to provide additional information after that report's been made, and then the experience starts to stumble. Well, they're going, all right, so where's my return on investment? And I'm not just talking about the cash. That's time and energy and effort that could have been put into a different program. But when you find a program you want to work on, a product that excites you, a team that seems to care, you want to continue to work there. You don't want to have to go and continuously rebuild those relationships everywhere you work. So, relationships are complicated. Doesn't matter whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, or a business relationship, and bug bounty programs are a business relationship. Relationships are complicated. So we're going to talk a little bit about being transparent. Communication is required. Keeping it fresh, how do you keep your program growing and seeing new things come into it? Set what your reward expectations are, and then that's the thing that I said we would come back to, which is rewarding in a timely manner. So researchers start by submitting lower level bugs to your program just to see how your team responds. What is their experience going to be working with your team? So what's your time to triage? What's your time to have that triaged bug be accepted? What's the time to have their rewards processed? Does the team engage on the submission, ask for more information, provide feedback if it's not a bug that they're interested in receiving? Do the reported vulnerabilities get fixed? Do you pass that information back to the researcher? So how do you keep it fresh? Or sorry, how do you keep it transparent? Share documentation. Think about it. You stand up a page and say, we accept stuff on these products. Okay, how do you set those up? Do you have credentials or a login system that you have to get into that? Does it require anything specific or unique to get into the thing that you're actually interested in talking about? Do you have APIs? Do you have an application that you could list right there on the page and say, go to this particular app store and download and go for it? When you've got good documentation, do you share whether your code base is getting updated? Do you have your change log in an easily accessible area? Both of those tell an existing researcher, one that's actively working on your program, hey, there's new stuff here, potentially, you should go take a look. It also has the added benefit of, hey, researcher who I haven't heard from in 6 months, we just pushed a brand new, huge, massive version update. Come back and take a look. You've had success before. We want to hear from you again. And then finally, and this can be a touchy subject, and I understand that, share your known issues. I'm going to say that once more. Share your known issues. There are two primary reasons for that. One, if a researcher is doing a lot of work and there's a chance that they're going to get duplicated, tell them. That sets an expectation right there. My stuff has been tested. Could be tested a lot, could be tested very little, but there's been testing. That allows a researcher to say, all right, in this area where there's a ton of stuff reported, those are the type of vulnerabilities that I actually really excel at. So instead of focusing on this specific target, I'm going to go to this one. And I'm going to spend my time and my energy there and see what I can find. But it also does something kind of interesting for more advanced researchers. They look at that and go, that's a challenge for me. I want that. I'm bored. I don't want to just do the easy stuff. I actually want to invest my time and give myself a challenge and see what I can find. Giving them the best of the both worlds to allow a researcher to choose from, to say, hey, sometimes I need some quick cash. I need some easy money. I had a flat tire last week and I had to buy a brand new tire for my car and I wasn't expecting that. Okay, well, throw a couple XSS up and you're fine. Sometimes it's all right, I've submitted 16 things to you. Let's see how much you've actually improved. Researchers have different motivations. They like fixing things, they like breaking things, they like solving puzzles. Give them different puzzles to solve. Communication is a must. That means if there's a delay, be upfront about it. Just be upfront. Say, hey, our program's a little behind. This is our expected timeline. Develop a communication cadence. If you are working with a third-party development team, perhaps where you don't own their prioritization queue and you don't know when they're going to get to it, be honest about it. If you can, get a member of that third-party team to come in and be the one to explain it to the researcher. That might actually change how quickly they prioritize the fix. They can't see what is going on behind the screen. So if you go and say, all right, I'll come back to you in a week, it's 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, that's a problem. You are heading for a potential escalation. So just be upfront. Be as transparent as you can be, but Adam had a great comment earlier, which is whatever you post, they're going to take literally and as written in stone. So if you're saying, I will come back to you in 2 weeks, you actually have to come back in 2 weeks, otherwise they're gonna be blowing up something, whether it's your sport team, your social media, doesn't matter, they will be blowing you up. So, communication is key. As I said, it also helps keep your development teams on track. One other comment about using templated answers, which Adam also touched on in his first speech today. Templated answers are fine the first couple of times, but if you're at that 6-week or more and you don't have an actual update for them, you actually need to change what you're saying. Because they're gonna get bored, they're gonna walk way back and say, you actually don't care, you're just giving me a template. I mean, think about it. When you reach out about something and all you get is a form answer, how much does that tick you off? Imagine getting that multiple times. Remember, your program is not the only one that they're working on. So to make yourself a differentiator against other programs, do better. Do what, treat them like you would want to be treated. Keeping it fresh. So the ideal way to do this is, of course, just add new product, add new targets, add new scope. Okay, I understand what that actually means. You have to actually have new product, have new targets, have new scope to add. Well, we already talked a little bit about the change log. Your code base has changed. You've pushed an update. That's new content. Talk about it. Eventually, right now, if you have a very limited scope, eventually researchers are going to run out. So what's next? Well, if you know you have something new coming out, and you say it's an IoT device, and you only have a few limited options on who might be able to test, look for a researcher who's had success on your program before. Say, hey, I got an opportunity for you. It's a relatively exclusive one if you have the ability to do so. And I'm pulling a small group of researchers together to give you a sneak peek, to let you get first crack at this unreleased thing. They will jump all over that. Now, the one thing about devices, which I do come back to, shipping devices is a pain. It's actually just as bad as figuring out if you're shipping swag, how you're actually distributing all of that. We can talk more about that offline if anybody's curious. It is a pain point, but the payoffs can be huge. Just putting that out there. Set reward expectations. I work for a vendor, so I have to interpret many program briefs, all in the space of a very short period of time, anytime a researcher has a question. The clearer you can be around what you value, different things, different targets, different vulnerability types at, the better the researcher can make a decision. This is super important. They need to know where to spend their time. They need to know, depending on what their current motivations and needs are, where they should focus their valuable time and effort. Panel did mention this, but I'm going to bring it up again. Out of scope. It is not enough necessarily to say, the things that we have listed on this page are in scope. Researchers are hackers. They like breaking the rules. They like testing those boundaries. They will ask about every little thing imaginable under the sun. That's sometimes good. I believe it was Greg who mentioned, Well, through our bounty program, we discovered we had things we didn't even know about as a security team. Okay, well, that's definitely something you want to know about, so you can potentially include or exclude as is necessary. You are going to get reports that are out of scope. Decide as a team how you're going to handle them. I am firmly in the camp that if somebody does good, valuable research, they should be compensated accordingly. Depending on what your program's reward structure looks like, whether it's points, cash, swag, whatever the case may be, that can take different forms. But most researchers and most of their reports represent hard work that they put in, either creating that POC, writing that report, doing the actual testing. So when they find out, because they interpret your brief as not being super clear that this particular thing was not actually in scope for reward, you can understand why that misset expectation might be there. I am not advocating necessarily, because there are these things called budgets, that you just pay everything. You can pay a reduced amount. You can offer another opportunity. Maybe you permit them to do a blog, a disclosure of some kind. But think of it in that terms. These are not employees. They're contractors. At best, freelancers most commonly. Whatever you decide regarding scope rewards, though, stick to the plan. Try not to have too many exceptions. Unless budget is no issue and you just have all the money to burn, then please go ahead and reward. The researchers will love your program and probably will never say a bad thing against you. Almost never say a bad thing against you. Yeah, there's my point. The last thing I'm going to say about rewards, which is about how and when you pay them. I strongly recommend, after multiple years of dealing with escalations, that you don't wait until a fix is out to give them the first reward. Now, if you want to talk about paying off after retest, that's a different subject. But recognizing that they brought you something of value. If you had a contractor working on your house, you're not going to wait to necessarily the final finishing to make that first payment. That's not how that works. There is a large percentage of the researcher community right now where this is actually their full-time job. They are paying their bills. They are sending their kids to school. They are buying food. They're paying for cars, let's be honest, with the money that they are making from these programs. Now you think about it, $1,000 here, a couple $100 there. The vast majority of researchers, they're not getting the $10,000, the $20,000, the $300,000 payout yet. They're getting those $150, maybe $200, maybe $500 payments. Now, those add up over time, but if you take 6 months to pay them, they're not going to talk to you for much longer. So ultimately, when it comes to building a successful program, it's all about relationship management. You can do that through a vendor, you can do that internally, but no matter what, you are paying to manage your relationship, whether that be through your specific team or through a vendor who helps you manage those manage the relationships, the thing that I just said. If you choose to spend time investing into your researchers and into your program, you will get the same amount back much more strongly. They will be loyal. They will want to work. They will bring things to you that you had no idea was out there and say, so I found a thing, and I know it's not in reward, but I feel obligated to tell you about this before it gets out anywhere else because it's that important for you guys to go consider fixing. I mean, what kind of a better relationship than that, right? Okay, so that's the trust side. What happens when that trust boat gets rocked? Because it's gonna. You betrayed my tiny trust. I feel bad for the cat. I'm waiting so she can take a picture. You're welcome. All right, so when a critical vulnerability comes in as a report, you probably have an incident report team spun up within your development teams. You know how to actually go forth and get ready to fix it. What about the rest of your company? What about your support team, who may have gotten this escalation notification coming into your support portal, and they're like, and what's SQL injection? What's remote code execution? What do we do with this thing? Talk to your social media teams. Talk to your support teams. They are often the first people externally, well, they're the internal people who are dealing with the external, like, incoming message of, hey, you know what? I'm really tired of you ignoring me for 6 weeks, for 6 months, whatever the timeline is. I'm now making it public that you don't care that I reported something of whatever criticality. I don't care. Internet doesn't care. They don't know the difference between a lot of these things. We see that every day. So educate your internal teams. Have a conversation with your PR and your communication teams before you start the bounty program, so you can sort of give them a bit of education on what type of problems they might have to be responding to. Do they have to, talk to stakeholders? Do they have to talk to customers and say, so we had a thing, we fixed the thing, here's how you go fix yourself. Whether we push a patch and you download it, or, hey, we've already rolled out the fix, doesn't even matter, you don't have to do anything at this point. Those are the best kind of communications to send, but they're not always the ones that you're going to be able to do. 0 days, your PR and your communication teams, those are the ones that are getting hit the hardest. If they have no concept of this security thing and it just gets slammed into them, they are going to be running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Very nice people, I'm very sure, but they have a right to be panicking at that point. Bring them in, educate them so that they can not only prepare correctly, but also understand the seriousness of why this happened, what we're doing about it, and why in the future a bug bounty program actually should help avoid that. Most importantly, stay calm. Your team members, your development teams, your PR, everybody, including your C-level, they will feed off of you. If you are spun up, it is going to just ripple forward. Assume that everybody who is involved in the situation wants to improve the situation. I realize after many years of escalations, it doesn't always seem like it. It really, really doesn't. But do your best to say, all right, hang on. Let's take a step back. Let's just take a deep breath and go forth from there. Sarcasm and snark don't translate well. Communication online is really hard. Really hard. Many researchers don't speak English as their first language. That means that they may make a statement instead of a question. And I'm not just talking about literally missing a question mark, though that will often happen. The actual grammar and sentence structure may not be something because you're working through a translator or whatever your English lessons have taught you. You are not working in their language of business. They are working in yours. Remember, you're a human, I think. So are they, I think. Assume that if you were face-to-face, if there wasn't that screen in front of you, that's how you should be talking to them. Engage with them. Communicate with them. Not at them, not to them, with. Also, there's this lovely thing called don't send until you've reread it like 15 times. Literally get up, go have a cup of tea, take a walk around the block, then come back and say, I'm going to take out this sentence because it isn't what I need to be saying right now. That works internally, also works externally. Last piece that I want to talk about is feedback. Constructive, critical, the other kind. If someone's bringing a problem to you, don't just assume that your team is actually doing the job that you had originally decided that they were going to do. Actually look into it. Trust, but verify. A very wise woman told me that many years ago when I first started in security. Live by it every day. Take what they are telling you of their experience at face value and then go dig into it. You may find that it's just a miscommunication. You may find that they're jumping the gun. You may also find that there is actually a serious problem, and that's something that you want to address, because one bad apple, one bad experience spoils the rest. Researchers talk to each other. Who are you working on right now? Oh, I just, don't touch this one. I just had a terrible experience. But this program, these guys over here, they get it. They care, they talk, they reward on time. Trust me, rewarding on time is probably the single best thing you can do to just circumvent, even if you've had a really contentious submission and back and forth with the researchers, paying them fairly, reasonably, in a reasonable amount of time, solves a lot of problems. It isn't that the problem is solved or the miscommunication solved, but it de-escalates. They can go on and look at the next thing. You can go on and actually start fixing the thing. Okay. So that is my presentation for today. It has come to an end. Thank you so much for anyone who has actually sat through all 3 pieces. We very much appreciate you joining us, and I hope that you learned a thing or two. So, cheers.
All right, once again, thank you so much for coming to the first micro summit on bug bounties at Black Hat. We would love your feedback. Please fill out feedback forms. I've been tweeting using the bug bounty micro summit hashtag, so it won't be too hard to find me if you want to send me direct messages with feedback. Positive, negative, the stories of what worked for you, what didn't. I don't know if we'll do another one of these, but I do know that all of the slides will be available online. I've asked each of the speakers and participants to take the slides, but also distill sort of checklists. So it's more of a punch down list for people who want to take this back to work and say, okay, here's my next steps. And we'll get those uploaded as well. So, I hope we continue the conversation as a community and can all work together on how to protect all of our customers through partnerships with security researchers and bug bounties. Thanks.